The text message arrived at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday night in March. I was in my home office, hunched over 3 monitors displaying security footage from a warehouse in Tacoma. One of our clients had reported suspicious activity near their loading docks, and I'd been scrubbing through hours of grainy video, looking for anything that didn't belong. My coffee had gone cold 2 hours ago. My eyes burned from the screen glare. When my phone buzzed, I almost ignored it. Should have been asleep hours ago, and anyone who mattered knew not to contact me this late unless someone was dead. I picked it up anyway. Unknown number. The area code was local, but the number meant nothing to me. The message read, "Your wife is planning to kill you. I'm the only one who can prove it. Riverside Diner. Tomorrow. 6 a.m. Come alone. A friend who has nothing left to lose." I read it 3 times. Most people would have dismissed it as a prank. Some drunk idiot with a wrong number. Maybe a disgruntled employee from one of my security contracts trying to mess with my head. But I spent 8 years in Army intelligence before I started my own firm. And one thing you learn in that line of work is that the messages you want to ignore are usually the ones that matter most. I screenshot the text. Then I ran the number through every database I had access to. Legally, of course. Burner phone. Purchased 2 days ago at a gas station convenience store in Enumclaw, about 40 miles east of Seattle. Paid cash. No surveillance footage available without a warrant. I had no grounds to request. Whoever sent this wasn't stupid. I pushed back from my desk and walked to the master bedroom. The door was open a crack, the way Megan always left it when I worked late. I stood in the hallway and listened to her breathing. Slow, steady. The breathing of someone deep in sleep. I eased the door open another inch and watched her in the dim light from the hallway. She was lying on her side, facing away from me, her dark hair spread across the pillow. 9 years of marriage. 9 years of sharing that bed, that room, that life. Then her phone screen lit up beneath her pillow. Just a brief glow, quickly extinguished. Like someone had received a notification and immediately silenced it. She wasn't asleep. She was pretending. I stepped back from the door and returned to my office. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the dark, thinking about everything I thought I knew and everything I was starting to suspect I didn't. The Riverside Diner was a greasy spoon off Highway 169, the kind of place truckers stopped for eggs and coffee at ungodly hours. I arrived at 5:45 a.m. 15 minutes early. Old habits. I parked where I could see the entrance and both exits. I went inside, ordered black coffee from a waitress who looked like she'd been working the night shift since the Reagan administration, and took a booth in the back corner with my back to the wall. At 6:02 a.m., a woman walked in. She was around 40, maybe a little younger. Blonde hair pulled back in a ponytail. No makeup. Dressed in jeans and a gray sweater that looked like she'd grabbed the first thing in her closet. She was carrying a manila envelope and her hands were shaking. She spotted me immediately. I was the only one in the place besides the waitress and an old man nursing a plate of hash browns at the counter, and walked straight to my booth. She slid into the seat across from me without asking permission. "Grant Parker," she said. It wasn't a question. "That's right." She set the envelope on the table between us but didn't open it. Up close, I could see the dark circles under her eyes. She hadn't slept either. "My name is Linda Holloway," she said. "My husband has been sleeping with your wife for 14 months. I found out 3 weeks ago." She paused, her jaw tightening. "But that's not why I'm here." I waited. I've conducted enough interrogations to know the value of silence. "I'm here because they're planning to kill you." There it was. The words hung in the air between us like smoke. "That's a serious accusation," I said. "I know." "You have proof?" She pushed the envelope toward me. "More than proof. I have their whole playbook." I opened the envelope. Inside, I found printed text conversations, dozens of pages clearly transcribed from a phone. a USB drive, a photograph of a man and woman in a hotel lobby, standing close together but not touching. The man was tall, dark-haired, wearing a sport coat that probably cost more than most people's rent. The woman was Megan, my wife. Looking at a man I didn't recognize with an expression I'd never seen on her face. Open, eager, hungry. I kept my face neutral. Another skill from my army days. Never let them see you bleed. The texts are from my husband's phone, Linda said. I cloned it 3 weeks ago when I started to suspect. I didn't know what I was looking for at first. I thought maybe he was gambling again, or maybe he'd gotten into debt with the wrong people. I never imagined. She trailed off, shaking her head. The audio file is a conversation I recorded through the bedroom wall. They thought I was asleep. I wasn't. And the photograph? Marriott downtown, 6 months ago. I hired a photographer once I knew what I was looking for. I studied the picture again. Megan was wearing a dress I didn't recognize. Something expensive. Something she'd hidden from me. There's a note too, Linda said. In the envelope, handwritten, by your wife. I found it at the bottom. A single sheet of paper torn from a legal pad. Megan's handwriting. I'd know it anywhere. D timeline needs to move up. G is getting suspicious. We need to act before the spring. I'll handle the insurance. You handle the rest. All my love, M. I read it twice. Then I set it down on the table and looked at Linda Holloway. What does handle the rest mean? Exactly what you think it means. Linda's voice was steady now, the trembling in her hands replaced by something harder. My husband's name is Derek Holloway. He's a real estate developer, or he was before he ran his company into the ground. Right now, he's about 3 months from bankruptcy and drowning in almost $2 million of personal debt. And he sees my wife as his way out. Your wife and your insurance policy. From what I've pieced together, she increased your life insurance 6 months ago, from $1 million to $2 million. She doesn't have the authority to do that without my signature. She forged it. I let that sink in. My wife had forged my signature on a document designed to profit from my death. Why come to me? I asked. Why not go to the police? Linda laughed, but there was no humor in it. And tell them what? That my husband and your wife have been having an affair? That they've made some vague references to handling problems and timelines? It's not enough. Planning isn't a crime until it becomes conspiracy, and conspiracy requires an overt act. Right now, all we have is 2 people talking. Talking isn't illegal. So what do you want from me? She met my eyes. I want them to take a step. I want proof that will stick. And I think you're the only person who can help me get it. I didn't respond immediately. I was still processing, still fitting the pieces together. But one thing didn't add up. You said you found out 3 weeks ago. What made you suspicious in the first place? Linda's expression flickered. Something dark passed behind her eyes. I started looking into Derek's past, into things he'd never told me about. She paused. Did you know he was married before? I didn't know he existed until 20 minutes ago. Her name was Rachel. They were married for 4 years. She died 8 years ago, on a hiking trip in Colorado. The official ruling was accidental death. She fell from a trail in Rocky Mountain National Park. Linda's voice hardened. She was alone with Derek when it happened. No witnesses. She had a sprained ankle at the time. She shouldn't have been on that trail at all. And Derek collected $750,000 in life insurance 2 months later. The diner suddenly felt very cold. You think he killed her? I know he killed her, and if we don't stop him, he's going to do it again. To you. And probably, eventually, to me. I looked at the woman across from me. A stranger until this morning. A woman whose husband was sleeping with my wife. A woman who had every reason to lie, to manipulate, to use me as a weapon in her own private war. But I'd spent years reading people, learning to separate truth from deception, fear from calculation. And what I saw in Linda Holloway's eyes wasn't deception. It was terror. "All right," I said. "Let's talk about what happens next." We met again that evening at a coffee shop in Bellevue, far enough from both our homes to minimize the risk of being seen. I'd spent the day analyzing the evidence Linda had provided, listening to the audio recording in my car with the windows up and the engine off. The recording was damning, but Linda was right. It wasn't definitive. Derek and Megan spoke in circles, in hints, in half-finished sentences. References to solving the problem and after it's done, and the new timeline. A prosecutor could argue it meant anything. A defense attorney would tear it apart. I needed more. Linda was already waiting when I arrived, tucked into a corner booth with an untouched latte cooling in front of her. I slid in across from her and took a moment to study her face. The fear was still there, but something else had joined it. Determination, maybe. Or just the grim resolve of someone who'd realized there was no path back to the life they'd known. "Ground rules," I said, sliding a burner phone across the table to Linda. "From now on, we only communicate on these. I have the matching one. Never use your regular phone to contact me. Never mention my name in your house. Never put anything in writing that could be traced back to either of us." She took the phone and slipped it into her purse. "Understood. Everything I do has to be legal, or at least legally defensible. I'm not going to prison because I was too stupid to cover my tracks." "What about Derek? Derek and Megan need to incriminate themselves. I'm not framing anyone. I'm not manufacturing evidence. They're going to damn themselves with their own actions. All I'm going to do is give them the opportunity." Linda nodded slowly. "What do you need from me?" "Intelligence. You're inside Derek's life. You see things I can't. What he buys, where he goes, who he talks to, I need to know all of it." "I can do that." "How are you holding up? At home, I mean. Acting normal around him?" She let out a bitter laugh. "Normal, right. Every night I climb into bed next to a man who might have killed his first wife and is definitely planning to help kill someone else. Every morning I smile at him over breakfast and ask about his day. Normal is not the word I'd use." "You're stronger than you know," I said. "Most people would have fallen apart by now. Most people didn't grow up in a house where falling apart wasn't an option." Her eyes hardened. "My mother was an ER nurse for 30 years. She saw everything. Car wrecks, overdoses, beating so bad you couldn't recognize the person underneath. She taught me that when things go wrong, you don't panic. You assess, you prioritize, and you act. Your mother sounds like someone I would have liked. She passed away 4 years ago, lung cancer. Never smoked a day in her life." Linda shook her head. "But she'd have liked you too. She always said you can tell a lot about a person by how they handle bad news. You didn't flinch this morning when I dropped a bomb on you. You just started thinking about what to do next. Old habits. Military? 8 years. Army intelligence." Linda nodded slowly, like a piece of a puzzle had just clicked into place. "That explains a lot. The way you carry yourself. The way you look at everything like you're mapping escape routes. Occupational hazard. Well, right now it's the hazard that's going to save my life. And yours. One more thing." I leaned forward. "You said Derek's done this before. His first wife. How sure are you?" "Sure enough to be terrified. Sure enough to know that if this goes wrong, I'll be next." "Then we don't let it go wrong." I went home that night and kissed my wife hello. Megan greeted me at the door with a smile and a glass of wine, asking about my day like she hadn't spent 14 months plotting my death. I smiled back and told her about a difficult client, a late-night surveillance job, nothing important. We ate dinner together. We watched television. We went to bed at our usual time. She fell asleep beside me, or pretended to, and I lay in the darkness, listening to her breathe, thinking about what she would look like in an orange jumpsuit. The war had begun. She just didn't know it yet. Over the next 2 weeks, I built profiles on my enemies. Derek Holloway was easier than I expected. The man left trails everywhere: digital footprints, financial records, public court documents from his failed developments. His real estate company, Holloway Premier Properties, had 3 projects in various stages of collapse. A condo development in Kirkland that ran out of funding. A strip mall in Federal Way mired in permit disputes. A mixed-use building in Renton that had been shut down by the city for code violations. He owed money to banks, to contractors, to private investors. His credit was shot. His reputation in the development community was toxic. Nobody would touch him. His first wife's death was harder to research, but I had resources. Kevin Torres, an old army buddy who'd gone into private investigation, specialized in insurance fraud. He had contacts everywhere: law enforcement, medical examiners, insurance adjusters, people who owed him favors. Rachel Holloway, Kevin said when I called him. Died August 2017, Rocky Mountain National Park. Fell from a trail called Long's Peak. 16,000 feet up. Brutal way to go. What does your gut tell you? My gut tells me she shouldn't have been anywhere near that trail. She'd sprained her ankle 3 days before the hike. There's a medical record from an urgent care clinic in Estes Park. The doctor specifically advised against strenuous activity. And she went anyway. According to Derek, it was her idea. She wanted to push through, didn't want to waste the trip. He tried to talk her out of it, but she insisted. Convenient. Very. The investigation was cursory. No witnesses, no evidence of foul play. Grieving husband cooperated fully. Ruled accidental and closed within 6 weeks. Can we reopen it? Not without new evidence. But if something happens here, if this thing goes sideways and Derek gets arrested, I can guarantee someone's going to take another look at Rachel. I thanked Kevin and hung up. That night, I met with Linda at a hotel bar in Redmond. Neutral territory, anonymous enough that nobody would recognize either of us. She looked worse than she had at the diner, thinner, paler, like the stress was eating her alive from the inside. I slid a folder across the table. Everything I've found on your husband's business dealings. He's not just in debt. He's being sued by 3 former investors. One of them is connected to people who don't file lawsuits when they want their money back. Linda flipped through the pages, her face growing paler with each one. I knew things were bad. I didn't know they were this bad. Derek is desperate. Desperate men make mistakes. That works in our favor. She looked up at me. And Megan? What have you found on her? I hesitated. This was the part I hadn't wanted to talk about, the part that made it personal instead of just tactical. Tell me, Linda said. I need to know what we're dealing with. So I told her. Megan Parker, née Williams, 35 years old, grew up in a trailer park outside Spokane. Father drank himself to death when she was 12. Mother worked 3 jobs and still couldn't keep the lights on. Megan had clawed her way out through sheer determination. Scholarships, internships, a marketing degree from UW, a climb up the corporate ladder that was genuinely impressive. I'd loved her for that determination once, that refusal to accept the hand she'd been dealt. I'd seen it as strength. Now I saw it as something else. Something darker. A hunger that could never be satisfied. A fear of returning to poverty so deep that she'd rather see me dead than risk losing what we'd built. I found the insurance policy she'd altered. She'd forged my signature on the beneficiary increase. Sloppy work, honestly. An expert would catch it in 5 minutes. But she was banking on never needing an expert. She was banking on my death being ruled accidental, just like Rachel's. Around day 15, Linda sent me a text that changed everything. Found something. Derek took out a life insurance policy on Emmy, $500,000, 8 months ago, I never signed anything. I stared at the message for a long minute. Then I called her on the burner. You're sure? I found the paperwork in his desk. He must have forged my signature too. Her voice was tight, controlled. He's planning the same thing for me that he did for Rachel. I'm just on a different timeline. How long? I don't know, but I'm not waiting to find out. The stakes had just doubled. This wasn't just about catching Derek and Megan anymore. Linda was genuinely in danger. We need to move faster, I said. Agreed. 3 weeks in, I set the trap. The idea came to me during one of my late-night planning sessions, staring at maps of the surrounding area and thinking about what Derek would need to make this work. He needed isolation. He needed predictability. He needed to know exactly where I'd be and when I'd be there, with no witnesses and no security. So I decided to give him exactly that. Or at least, make him think I was giving him that. I came home one evening and told Megan I'd landed a new contract. High-risk work for an industrial client. Night shifts at a remote facility outside Monroe. The client wanted personal oversight from the owner. Security was paramount. It'll mean long hours, I said, watching her reaction carefully across the dinner table. I'll be out there alone most nights. The site's pretty isolated. Megan's expression flickered. Just for a moment, a split second of something that looked almost like excitement, before settling into supportive wife mode. That sounds exhausting, honey. Are you sure you want to take it on? The money's too good to pass up. Plus, it's a chance to show what we can do with high-value contracts. If we nail this one, it could lead to a whole new line of business. I'm proud of you. She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You work so hard. Sometimes I worry you're pushing yourself too much. I can handle it. I know you can. That's not what I meant. She paused, her thumb tracing circles on the back of my hand. I don't want anything to happen to you. Working alone in some isolated place late at night? She let the sentence trail off, her eyes wide with manufactured concern. I'll be careful. I know, but maybe... She bit her lip, as if she was wrestling with whether to say something. Maybe you should increase your insurance, just in case, for my peace of mind. There it was. The ask, delivered with perfect timing and perfect innocence. Already crossed my mind, actually, I said. I'll look into it tomorrow. Great minds. She smiled, and for anyone watching, it would have looked like a loving wife worried about her hard-working husband. But I knew what was behind that smile now. I knew what she was really thinking. He's making it easy. He's going to a remote location, alone, at night. We can finally do it. I love you, she said. I love you too, I replied. Neither of us meant it. That night, after Megan went to bed, my burner phone buzzed. Linda? Derek made 3 calls after 10 p.m., all to the same number, Megan's burner. Couldn't hear everything through the wall but caught fragments. He's making it easy for us, and 3 weeks, and we need to move fast. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed back, good. Let them think they're ahead. Phase 2 begins tomorrow. Copy that, Linda replied. Stay safe, Grant. You too. The next morning, I called my attorney. Bradley Shaw had handled my business contracts for years. He was discreet, efficient, and, most importantly, not someone Megan had ever met. I need to update my will, I told him, and I need it kept confidential, completely off the radar. Bradley didn't ask questions. That's what I paid him for. Within 48 hours, Megan was no longer my beneficiary. Everything, the business, the house, my investments, all $4.2 million, would go to my younger sister in Portland. Megan didn't know that, of course. She still thought she was the grieving widow in waiting. Linda's intelligence kept flowing. Derek had started researching industrial accidents. His browser history, obtained through Kevin's contact at his phone carrier, a gray area I chose not to examine too closely, showed weeks of searches. Electrical accidents, falls from height, OSHA investigation timelines. How long it takes to settle a life insurance claim. He'd also made some purchases. Linda found receipts in his jacket pockets. A prepaid credit card, bought with cash, used to purchase zip ties, industrial rope, a detailed map of the area around my work site, and a stun gun. He's building a kit, I told Kevin over beers at a dive bar in Tukwila. Everything he needs to stage an accident. Classic methodology, Kevin agreed. Subdue the target, set the scene, disappear. If your body's not found for 8-10 hours, most of the forensic evidence degrades. Hard to prove anything at that point. So we catch him before he gets to that stage. We catch him with the kit, at the scene, in the act. You're talking about a sting operation. I'm talking about letting Derek Holloway walk into a trap of his own making. Kevin was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded slowly. I know some people. Off-duty cops who do private security on the side. They can be positioned nearby. Witnesses who happen to be in the right place at the right time. Legal? Completely. They're not entrapping anyone. They're just observing. Set it up. At the 1-month mark, something changed. Megan became attentive in a way she hadn't been in years. She made my favorite dinners. She asked about my work with what seemed like genuine interest. She touched me more. A hand on my shoulder, a kiss on the cheek, a lingering hug when I came home. A stranger might have thought she was falling in love with me all over again. I knew better. She was softening me up, making sure I trusted her, making sure I wouldn't suspect. One evening, she brought up the will. You know, she said casually, we should probably update our estate documents. It's been years since we looked at them. God forbid anything happened to either of us. Already handled it, I said. She looked up from her pasta. What? I updated my will last month. Didn't want to worry you with the details, but with this new contract and everything, I figured it was smart to get our affairs in order. Oh, a pause. What changes did you make? Nothing major, just some language about the business succession. Made sure everything's clear-cut. I smiled at her. You're still taken care of, if that's what you're worried about. She smiled back. But I saw the wheels turning behind her eyes. The slight tightening of her jaw. She wanted to ask more questions but knew she couldn't without raising suspicion. That's good, she said finally. I just want us to be prepared for anything. We are, trust me. If she caught the irony in those words, she didn't show it. The same week, Kevin uncovered something that added a new layer to the picture. I've been digging into your wife's finances, he told me over a secure call. Found something interesting. 6 months ago, she transferred 15 grand to an account in Derek's name. 15,000? Clean wire transfer. Around the same time Derek was desperately shopping for investors. Looks like she was keeping him afloat. I processed this. She's financially invested in him. Literally. If his company goes under completely, she loses that money. And if you stay alive, she can't collect the insurance to make up for it. She's boxed herself in. Which means she's more committed than I thought. Exactly. This isn't cold feet territory anymore. She's in too deep to back out. On day 35, everything accelerated. I was in my office at the real warehouse, my company's actual operations center, not the fake site I described to Megan, when my burner phone lit up. Linda's number. Emergency. Derek moved up timeline. He's planning tonight. Now. Not next week. Megan told him you're acting strange. They're panicking. I stared at the message. My heart rate didn't change. Years of training had burned that kind of reaction out of me. But my mind immediately shifted into operational mode. I grabbed my jacket and started making calls. Kevin first. Get your people in position, tonight. I'm sending you the address. Then Bradley. Whatever happens in the next 12 hours, I need you available. Then my sister. "Hey, Sarah. Just wanted to say I love you." "No, nothing's wrong. Just one of those days." By 7:30 p.m., I was at the warehouse I'd rented in Monroe. It was a perfect location. Isolated, industrial, exactly the kind of place where an accident might occur. I'd wired the entire building with cameras over the previous week. Every angle covered, every shadow illuminated. Kevin arrived at 8, parking his surveillance van in an adjacent lot with clear sight lines to the main entrance. Two off-duty officers, Mike Brennan and Carlos Santos, positioned themselves in unmarked cars half a block away. Everyone had communication earpieces. Everyone knew the plan. Now we waited. At 9:47, my phone buzzed. Linda again. He just left. Driving toward Monroe, he's carrying a duffel bag. I relayed the information to the team. Then I took up position in the shadows near the main floor, where the overhead lights were deliberately dimmed. I had my Glock 19 holstered on my hip. Legal, thanks to my concealed carry permit. I hoped I wouldn't need it. At 10:15, headlights swept across the warehouse's windows. A car, black BMW SUV, Derek's vehicle according to Linda, parked 2 blocks away. The lights went dark. I watched through a gap in the window covering as a figure emerged and approached on foot. Tall, athletic build. Moving with the kind of casual confidence that comes from never having faced real consequences. Derek Holloway had arrived. He circled the building once, checking for other vehicles, other signs of activity. I'd been careful to make the place look occupied but not heavily guarded. A single light in the office area. My truck parked by the side entrance. Exactly what you'd expect from a security consultant working a night shift alone. He entered through a side door, one I'd left deliberately unsecured. I heard his footsteps on the concrete floor, careful and measured. Stalking. "Kevin," I murmured into my earpiece. "He's inside, moving toward the main floor." "Copy. We have visual on the entrance. Ready to move on your signal." I waited in the shadows as Derek crept through the building. He was carrying a duffel bag over one shoulder. In the dim light, I could see him scanning the space, looking for me, looking for the isolated target his lover had promised him. He muttered something under his breath. It sounded like, "Make this quick." I stepped out of the darkness. "Looking for someone?" Derek spun around, his face cycling through shock, then fear, then calculation. The duffel bag slipped from his shoulder as his hand moved toward his waistband. "I wouldn't," I said, letting my jacket fall open to reveal the Glock. "Hands where I can see them." He froze. His eyes darted around the warehouse, looking for exits, looking for options, finding none. "Grant." He forced a smile, the charm kicking in on reflex. "What a coincidence. I was just... Save it. I know everything. The plan. The insurance. Your first wife. Rachel." The smile died. Something cold slid behind his eyes. Something predatory. The real Derek Holloway emerging from beneath the veneer. "You can't prove anything." "I don't have to. You're carrying everything I need." I gestured toward the duffel bag. He'd dropped it when he spun around, and it had landed with a heavy thud. Too heavy for clothes. Too heavy for anything innocent. "Open it," I said. "I want a lawyer." "You're not under arrest. Yet." "Open the bag." For a long moment, nobody moved. The warehouse was silent except for the distant hum of traffic on the highway. Derek's eyes kept flicking to the exits, calculating distances, angles, odds. I could see the gears turning. Fight or flight, surrender or gamble. "You think you're smart," he said finally, his voice low and controlled. "You think you've got this all figured out, but you don't know what you're dealing with." I know exactly what I'm dealing with. A failed real estate developer drowning in debt. A man who murdered his first wife for insurance money and is planning to do it again. A coward who can only win when the other person doesn't see him coming. Something flickered in his eyes. Rage, maybe, or recognition. Megan told me about you, he said. Mr. Perfect, the war hero with the fancy security company. She said you were getting soft, predictable. That's why I didn't think you'd be a problem. She was wrong. She was wrong about a lot of things. His smile returned, but it was different now, cruel, mocking. You know, she came to me, right? I didn't seduce her. She found me at a business conference, started asking questions about real estate investments. She'd already done her research. She knew exactly what she wanted. And what was that? A way out. A way to cash out on you without a messy divorce. She said you had a prenup that would leave her with almost nothing if she left. She said she'd rather be a widow than broke. I kept my face neutral, but his words hit harder than I wanted to admit. Not because they were surprising, I'd already figured out most of this, but hearing it laid out so casually, so dismissively, like my life was just an obstacle to be cleared. So you offered to help, I said. I offered a partnership, 50-50 on the insurance. Enough for her to start over and enough for me to get out from under my debts. Win-win. Except for me, Derek shrugged. You can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. Open. The bag. His jaw tightened. For a long moment, I thought he might run. Or fight. The calculation was visible on his face. The odds, the angles, the distance between us. Then he lunged, not toward the exit, toward me. His first wife had been smaller than him, weaker, an easy target on a mountain trail. He'd made the mistake of thinking I'd be just as easy. I had 6 inches and 30 pounds on him, plus 8 years of Army combat training. The fight, if you could call it that, was over in seconds. I caught his arm, redirected his momentum, and put him on the ground hard enough to knock the wind out of him. By the time he'd stopped wheezing, I had his hands secured behind his back with zip ties. With his own zip ties, naturally. Seemed fitting. Kevin, I said into the earpiece, call it in. Already done. Cavalry's 3 minutes out. I crouched next to Derek, who was glaring up at me with pure hatred. The mask was fully off now. No more charm, no more smiles. Just the face of a killer who'd been caught. You know what the difference is between you and me? I said quietly. You thought you were the smartest person in the room. I never make that mistake. You're dead, Derek spat. You hear me? Even if I go down, Megan is going to prison, right alongside you. And when the Colorado AG reopens your first wife's case, and they will, you're never seeing daylight again. For the first time, real fear flickered across his face. Sirens in the distance, getting closer. The next 72 hours were chaos. Police flooded the warehouse. Derek was arrested on the spot. Possession of weapons and materials consistent with intent to commit assault, plus a dozen other charges the prosecutor would add once she reviewed the evidence. The duffel bag contained everything Linda had described. Rope, zip ties, gloves, the stun gun, and a syringe filled with what later testing identified as ketamine. He'd come prepared to incapacitate me, kill me, and stage the scene. My cameras had captured everything. By the next morning, Derek was in county lockup, and detectives had executed a search warrant on his home. They found more. So much more. His computer had searches for body disposal. His phone had hundreds of calls to Megan's burner. His basement had a box of documents he should have burned years ago, including paperwork from Rachel's life insurance payout and photographs of the trail where she died. Linda had been right about everything. The detective assigned to the case, a weathered woman named Patricia Reeves who'd been working homicides for 20 years, called me in for an interview 2 days after Derek's arrest. Tell me again how you knew to be at that warehouse, she said, her pen hovering over a notepad. I'd expected this. I'd prepared for it. I gave her the version of events that was true enough to withstand scrutiny. Linda's initial contact, the evidence she'd gathered, my decision to create an opportunity for Derek to incriminate himself. So you set a trap, Reeves said. I created a situation where Derek could make a choice. He chose to bring zip ties, rope, a stun gun, and a syringe full of ketamine to a building where he expected to find me alone. That was his choice, not mine. Reeves studied me for a long moment. You know what I think, Mr. Parker? I think you're a very careful man. I think you made sure every step of this was either legal or close enough that no prosecutor would touch you. I'm a security consultant, detective. Being careful is what I do. Uh-huh. She flipped her notepad closed. Well, your careful planning just handed us a case that's going to put away 2 people who were actively planning a murder. The DA is thrilled. She's talking about using this as a training example, how not to get away with conspiracy. I'm glad I could help. Reeves stood up, but paused at the door. One more thing. The wife, Linda Holloway, she your girlfriend or something? We've never met before last week. Really? Reeves didn't sound convinced. Because you two ran a pretty sophisticated operation for strangers. We had something in common, detective. We both wanted to stay alive. She nodded slowly. Fair enough. We'll be in touch if we need anything else. 2 days after Derek's arrest, the police came for Megan. I wasn't there when it happened. I'd moved into a hotel the night of Derek's arrest, partly for safety, partly because I couldn't stand to sleep next to her for another minute. But the detective called me afterward with the details. They'd arrived at our house with a warrant at 7 a.m. Megan had tried to run, out the back door in her bathrobe. They caught her in the neighbor's yard. She'd been crying, claiming she was the victim, saying Derek had manipulated her, controlled her, threatened her. She'd been afraid for her life, she said. She'd had no choice. Funny how she'd never mentioned any of that while she was forging my signature on insurance documents, while she was texting her lover about timelines and handling problems, while she was kissing me goodnight and counting down the days until I was dead. Conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, forgery. The charges kept piling up. I watched the news coverage from my hotel room. Local stations had picked up the story. Seattle couple arrested in murder for hire scheme, and Megan's booking photo was everywhere. She looked small in the harsh light of the police station, her eyes red from crying, her hair disheveled. Nothing like the polished woman I'd married. My phone rang constantly. Friends, family, business associates, all wanting to know if I was okay, if the stories were true, if there was anything they could do. I answered some of them. Most went to voicemail. Kevin stopped by the hotel that evening with a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses. Figured you could use company, he said, settling into the chair across from the bed where I was sitting. Figured right. He poured 2 generous glasses and handed me one. We drank in silence for a while, the news playing on mute in the background. You doing okay? Kevin asked finally. Define okay. Not falling apart. Not doing anything stupid. By that standard, I'm fine. Kevin nodded. You know, in all the years I've been doing this, I've seen a lot of people go through what you're going through. Finding out the person they loved was someone else entirely. Most of them fall apart. Drinking, drugs, bad decisions. The ones who make it through are the ones who keep putting one foot in front of the other, even when it feels pointless. Is this your version of a pep talk? It's my version of saying you're handling this better than most. Don't let that change. I took another sip of whiskey. The hardest part isn't that she wanted me dead. I can almost understand that. The money, the desperation, Derek whispering in her ear. What I can't understand is how she faked it so well. 9 years, Kevin. 9 years of dinners and vacations and conversations about our future. Was any of it real? Maybe some of it was. People aren't one thing or another. They're complicated. Megan probably did love you in her way for at least some of that time. But somewhere along the line, something changed. Fear took over. Derek showed up. And the part of her that was capable of loving you got buried under the part that was capable of doing this. That's supposed to make me feel better? No. It's supposed to make you understand that you didn't miss the signs because you were stupid. You missed them because the person showing those signs was an expert at hiding them. You were married to a con artist, Grant. And the best con artists are the ones who make you believe every word. I finished my whiskey and set down the glass. Thanks for coming, Kevin. Anytime. He stood up to leave, then paused. One more thing. The Colorado investigation is moving faster than expected. Turns out Rachel Holloway's sister has been waiting 8 years for someone to take another look at that case. She's cooperating fully with the AG's office. If there's any justice in the world, Derek's going down for both murders. And Megan? Conspiracy is not the same as murder, but 12 to 15 years? That's a long time to sit and think about choices. After Kevin left, I turned off the news and stared at the ceiling for a long time. The investigation into Rachel Holloway's death reopened within a week. Kevin's contact at the Colorado AG's office had been waiting for an excuse, apparently. The original investigation had always bothered people. Now they had a reason to look again. It took 3 months, but they found what they needed. A witness, a hiker who'd been on a different trail that day, came forward with photos he'd taken of the mountain. In the background of one shot, barely visible, were 2 figures near the cliff's edge. Forensic enhancement revealed what looked like a struggle. Derek's alibi collapsed. His story about Rachel wanting to push through despite her injury fell apart under scrutiny. The life insurance payout, the timing, the pattern, it all pointed in one direction. He was charged with first-degree murder in Colorado. Everyone knew how it would end. The preliminary hearing was held 6 weeks after the arrests. I testified for 3 hours. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Catherine Wu, walked me through every piece of evidence, every step of the investigation, every moment of that night at the warehouse. I answered calmly, clearly, sticking to the facts without embellishment. On cross-examination, Derek's defense attorney tried to paint me as a vigilante, a paranoid ex-soldier who'd manufactured evidence to frame his wife's lover. It didn't work. The video footage was too clear. Derek's own purchases were too damning. The pattern with Rachel was too obvious. At one point during my testimony, I caught Derek's eye across the courtroom. He was wearing an orange jumpsuit now, his expensive haircut grown out, his tan faded from weeks without sunlight. He stared at me with pure hatred. I stared back. You came into my house, I thought. You planned to kill me and take everything I'd built. And now you're going to spend the rest of your life paying for it. Derek looked away first. Megan took a deal. Her attorney, a public defender named James Whitfield, who'd drawn the short straw, came to me before the plea hearing. My client wants you to know she's sorry, he said, his voice carrying the exhausted tone of someone who'd spent too many hours listening to justifications he didn't believe. She wants you to know that Derek manipulated her, that she never would have. I'm not interested in what she wants me to know, I said. Is there something else? Whitfield sighed. She's hoping you won't pursue civil action. If you do, she'll be financially destroyed for the rest of her life. She tried to have me killed for insurance money. I think financially destroyed is the least of her concerns. The DA's offer is contingent on her testimony against Holloway. Full cooperation, complete account of the conspiracy. In exchange, she pleads to conspiracy to commit murder and gets 12 to 15. Without her testimony, the case against Holloway is still strong, but not airtight. The DA wants this to be unambiguous. I considered this. Part of me, the vindictive part, the part that had spent 9 years building a life with a woman who'd been planning my death, wanted to fight. Wanted to make her pay every penny, face every possible charge, suffer every consequence. But another part of me was just tired. I won't pursue civil action, I said finally. As long as she testifies against Derek fully and completely. If she holds back, if she tries to protect him, the deal's off. Whitfield nodded. I'll relay the terms. He did. Megan testified for 2 full days. By the time she was done, Derek's defense had nothing left to work with. Her attorney was a realist, if nothing else. The evidence was overwhelming. My surveillance footage, her own text messages, the forged insurance documents, her recorded conversations with Derek. She could fight it and lose spectacularly, or she could cooperate and maybe see daylight again before she turned 50. She testified against Derek, told the prosecutors everything about the plan, the timeline, how they'd researched methods and scouted locations. She claimed he'd been the mastermind, that he'd seduced her, manipulated her, preyed on her fear of returning to poverty. Maybe some of that was even true. Derek was charming, I'd give him that. And Megan's childhood had left scars I'd never fully understood. But none of that excused 18 months of planning my death. 18 months of lying beside me, pretending to love me, waiting for the right moment to collect on my corpse. She pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit murder. The judge gave her 12 years. The divorce was finalized before her sentencing. My attorney made it quick and brutal. Megan had no leverage, no assets, no ground to stand on. She signed away all claims to marital property in exchange for me not pursuing civil action. Everything we'd built together, the house, the investments, the business, stayed with me. It should have felt like victory. It just felt hollow. I ran into Linda once, about 6 months after everything settled. She was at a grocery store in Kirkland, of all places. I was in the produce section, pretending to care about which avocados were ripe, when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Are you actually going to eat those, or are you just using them as therapy? I turned around. She was standing there with a cart full of groceries and a little girl, maybe 5 years old, sitting in the front seat. Her daughter. One of the kids Derek had been planning to leave fatherless, or worse. Linda looked different than she had during our operation. Healthier. The dark circles under her eyes had faded. She'd put on a little weight, the good kind, the kind that comes from actually eating and sleeping like a normal person. Grant. She seemed genuinely happy to see me, if a little surprised. I wasn't sure if... I didn't know if you'd want to. It's fine, I said, setting down the avocados. How are you? Getting there. She glanced at her daughter, who was busy examining a box of animal crackers with the intense concentration only small children can muster. Sophie, can you say hi to Mommy's friend? The little girl looked up at me with huge brown eyes. Hi, she said solemnly. Hi, Sophie. Are you the man who helped Mommy with the bad thing? Linda's face flushed. Sophie, we talked about this. It's okay, I said. Yeah, Sophie, I'm that man. Thank you, Sophie said, still with that solemn gravity. Then she went back to her animal crackers. Kids process things differently, Linda said, her voice tight. She doesn't really understand what happened, but she knows something bad almost happened and that I was scared and that you helped. That's enough understanding for a 5-year-old. It's enough understanding for anyone, really. Linda shifted her weight, glancing around the store. We moved. Smaller place, but it's ours. Derek's assets were mostly dead anyway. At least the house was in my name. I heard you got full custody. He didn't exactly fight for it. Hard to parent from prison. His attorney sent a letter saying he wanted visitation rights. Can you believe that? Visitation rights, for a man who was planning to kill their mother for insurance money. The judge laughed him out of court. Good. What about you? Linda asked. I see the business is doing well. Every time I turn on the news, someone's talking about the security consultant who caught his own would-be killers. Fame isn't everything it's cracked up to be. No, I suppose it isn't. She studied my face for a moment. You look tired, Grant. Are you sleeping? Enough. That's not an answer. I smiled despite myself. You sound like my therapist. You're seeing a therapist? Good. I am too. Dr. Brennan, up in Bellevue. She specializes in trauma survivors. She's been helping me understand that what I went through wasn't normal, and that needing help to process it doesn't make me weak. My therapist says the same thing, Dr. Amin. Maybe they went to the same school. We both laughed, genuine laughs, the kind that come from shared experience rather than shared jokes. Sophie looked up at us curiously, then went back to her crackers. Thank you, I said, for that first message, for showing up at the diner, for all of it. She shook her head. I didn't do it for you. I did it because I was scared, and you seemed like someone who could actually do something about it. Still, if you hadn't reached out, but I did. She met my eyes. And here we are. Both still breathing. Both moving forward. That's what matters now. We stood there for a moment. Two strangers who'd been through something most people couldn't imagine. We didn't hug. We didn't exchange numbers. There was nothing romantic between us. There never had been. Just the strange intimacy of shared survival. Take care of yourself, Grant. You too, Linda. She pushed her cart toward the checkout line. Sophie waved at me with a tiny hand. I waved back. That was the last time I saw her. Derek got life without parole. The Colorado murder charge sealed it. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. With the additional charges from Washington, he'll die in prison. The verdict came down on a Thursday afternoon. I watched the live stream from my office, saw Derek's face go gray when the foreperson read the word guilty, saw his shoulders slump, saw whatever fight was left in him drain away. His attorney filed an appeal, of course. They always do. But everyone who'd followed the case knew it was a formality. The evidence was too overwhelming. The pattern was too clear. Derek Holloway had killed 2 women and planned to kill 2 more, and he was finally going to pay for it. Rachel's sister, a woman named Karen, who I'd never met but who'd sent me a handwritten thank you note after Derek's arrest, was interviewed on the courthouse steps after the verdict. 8 years, she said, her voice steady but her eyes wet. 8 years I've known something was wrong. 8 years I've been fighting to get someone to listen. And today, finally, my sister gets justice. I turned off the stream and sat alone in my office for a long time after that. Megan is still locked up. She'll be 47 when she gets out, if she serves her full sentence. The prison she's in is minimum security. Her cooperation against Derek earned her that much. But it's still prison. Gray walls, gray uniforms, gray food. Every day exactly like the one before, for 12 years. I don't think about her much anymore. There's no point. The woman I married, or thought I married, never existed. She was a performance, a long con, a mask worn by someone I never really knew. I got a letter from her once, a few months after the sentencing. 5 pages of cramped handwriting, trying to explain how she'd ended up where she was. The fear of poverty that had driven her since childhood. The thrill of Derek's attention. The slow escalation from fantasy to planning to action. I know you'll never forgive me, she wrote at the end. I don't expect you to. I don't even expect you to read this. But I needed you to know that somewhere, underneath everything, there was a version of me that really did love you. I just wasn't strong enough to protect her. I read the letter twice, then I burned it. Some conversations aren't worth having. It's been a little over a year now. The business is doing better than ever. Turns out, being the security consultant who uncovered and stopped his own murder plot is excellent marketing. I've had to hire 3 new employees just to handle the inquiries. I moved out of the house Megan and I shared. Couldn't stand the memories. The dinners we'd had, the conversations we'd held, the quiet moments on the couch watching terrible movies together. All of it was contaminated now. Every happy memory had a shadow version behind it. A version where she was calculating how much longer she had to wait, how much more she had to pretend. I sold the house to a young couple who had no idea about its history. They seemed happy when they signed the paperwork. I hope they stay that way. I bought a smaller place, a cabin outside Snoqualmie, with a view of the mountains. Quiet, peaceful, mine alone, no ghosts in the corners, no memories I have to avoid. I haven't dated anyone since. Not sure I'm ready. Maybe someday. Last week, Kevin sent me a text. Heard from a mutual friend. Linda's engaged. Some guy she met through her kid's school. Seems like the real deal. I smiled when I read it. Actually smiled. Good for her, I typed back. You doing okay? I looked out the window at the mountains turning pink in the sunset. Thought about everything I'd survived, everything I'd lost, everything I'd learned. Getting there, I typed. And for the first time in a long time, I meant it.